Right, what we'll do is we'll get going, and then if people join, then I'll just admit them into the thing as we go. So yeah, just a usual
Perfect.
kind of housekeeping. Just reminder to everybody that keeping everybody on mute, just apart from the speaker, so that we can hear her. Otherwise, everybody's kind of got background noise, and yeah, so it's easier that way. If anybody has any questions, I've just popped a little message in the chat box. So as we're going along, if anybody wants to ask anything, then do just pop something in that chat box, and we'll come to that at the end and do a little Q&A. And it's always useful if you're thinking, oh, I don't know whether to ask that. It's probably likely that somebody else is thinking that as well. So, so just go for it. Just pop it. It's only typing. So, so as usual, just a little reminder about what this summit is about, just so that you can hear about that as well, Jessie-Lynn. So obviously it's kind of termed to be about self-rediscovery. And I think a lot of people come into that expecting it to be about self-rediscovery of who we are kind of in our human form, which is kind of part of what we're addressing. But for me, I think more importantly, it's also pointing us back to who we are kind of beyond all of that, you know, and I think we'll probably come to that when we're talking about what love is in this chat. So I'm hoping we'll address that. But it's quite nice to kind of hear from the different speakers about their own journeys with things that they feel that they've suffered with, and perhaps then actually found you know, we can actually unravel a life that we love quite simply when we kind of delve into this understanding that we share, and kind of reconnect to our wisdom. So that's what it's all about. And we've been exploring a range of different topics. So it's quite nice that this one's focused on kind of the joy of being alone, and self-love and self-esteem and self-confidence and all that sort of stuff. Basically, so I'm excited. We're live most Fridays, and if people haven't been able to catch it here, it's in the replay in the member vault as well. And along the way, if anybody's got any questions, I'm always on hand to answer those. And I am live in the Self-Rediscovery Facebook group as well. So that's out the way. Today we have the wonderful Jessie-Lynn McDonald with us. So just to introduce you a little bit, and I'll let you do the kind of human intro in a little while, but I know that when we had, and it seems like 5 minutes ago, but it was like ages ago. But we had a really beautiful conversation, and there was just such a nice energy about it that I thought it'd be really lovely to have you on talking about kind of love and all of that stuff, because that's what kind of came out of our conversation, I think. So so yeah, and it's the perfect topic for Valentine's. But to formally introduce you, I guess, your bio says you're a certified clarity coach, 3P practitioner. So that 3P is 3 principles for those of you who aren't kind of familiar with that. And your focus is on mental health, resilience, well-being and potential. So I guess you're kind of helping people to transform their lives in relationships, separation, divorce, as a parent, or with their mental health and well-being. You say that you help people to let go of the mask of fear, self-judgment or doubt, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or in search for more out of themselves, their relationship, or their lives. And you say life is a gift of amazing potential, and you help clients embrace that opportunity. Now you're doing some amazing things as well, like your work with children for the My Mental Health Rocks in Canada, which is amazing. We can learn so much from children.
Yes.
So I'm hoping you'll speak a little bit about that. And also you work with women and children who've been trafficked, and you're a mentor for Sherry Blair's Foundation for Women. So you're doing loads of amazing things, and we're really lucky to have you here. So
Oh,
yeah.
it's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you.
I was looking forward to connecting, and I read your article that it came out. Was it just today you posted that about love? And I thought that was such a good, it captures things so well, and yeah, I'm super happy to be part of the conversation and part of the summit. It's been a really nice summit so far. I haven't been able to be online a lot, but I've gone back, like you say, and caught the replays, which is actually kind of nice too, because you can kind of take some more time to reflect on on the message or
Yeah.
what's being said during the conversation.
Exactly. And there's kind of pluses to both, I think. I think it's nice to be present here because you get to ask any questions if there are any, and interact. But then it's nice to be able to go and revisit it, because sometimes you're like, oh, that was really good. And you kind of want to go back and yeah, and rehear it. But yeah, so thank you for joining us. And I know people like a bit of a personal story. So I just wondered to start with whether you could just share a little bit of your own journey. Yeah, with us.
Oof. How many hours do we have blocked off for this? No, I'm kidding.
I know it's a big question, isn't
So,
it?
you know, I think in my personal journey, I was thinking about this last night when I was flying home. It kind of encaptures the beautiful mess what life and love is, because really, when now my perspective on love is we just are love, you know, and everything else tends to be a bit of, you know, the messages and the things that we can get that might cover that up, but it's still there underneath. So for me, I was married for a short period of time, and that obviously didn't work out. And I have a son who is, so I'm a single parent. I couldn't have written the journey, and this is the nice thing. This is the thing with love that's kind of, you can't write what you think the outcome would be. Like if I had written it and I had tried to control it, it certainly wouldn't have turned out like it did.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of my lessons with love, is that it is there. It's timeless. It's something that you can't measure. It's limitless. You know, there's an abundance of it.
Hmm.
The only thing getting in the way for me was myself. And when I was in relationships, my personal, really, like, you know, romantic relationships, I was looking for the relationship to define who I was. I was looking for something out of it
Yeah.
instead of looking the other way. So I was kind of looking in the wrong direction.
Hmm.
And inevitably that didn't work out, as it doesn't. um, but through that, I've gotten to this space of, you know, I'm so content. Like being alone to me is such a gift, because it's one of these things where it's provided me the opportunity to dig into a space within myself. And
Yeah.
often when there's a resistance, and when there's a resistance to being alone, or a resistance to being in a relationship, wonderful place to look and dig a little bit deeper. And so I've had the time to really look deeper and see a completely different world of limitless potential. So whether I'm in a relationship or not, either would be absolutely amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's gorgeous.
You want more?
Yeah, well, I was thinking
How
that.
much do you want?
No, that's gorgeous. I just wanted to dive into that a little bit for the people who maybe aren't familiar with the principles, to, I guess, explore how you came to the realization that we are love. Because I guess when I was kind of before principles understanding,
Yeah.
I would have probably heard that and been like, yeah, but how? Like, do you know what I mean? And that,
It's so
yeah.
woo-woo, right? Yeah, absolutely. Because if I look back at the serious relationships that I've been in, the committed ones, I went into them, and I lived for most of it being in a feeling of not enough, you know, or looking for validation from the relationship, as if the other person or just being in a relationship validated who I was.
Mm,
And, you know, so when things weren't working out, I also would look at the other person as if they were to blame for that.
mm,
And it was such a and so what I learned from the three principles is really, and I didn't come to the understanding of the three principles because of I was unhappy in a relationship or not being in a relationship. For me, it was to do with anxiety and just feeling overwhelmed with life in general. That but still the not enoughness. So the, you know, self-worth, that part for me, I felt like I wasn't enough as a mom. I wasn't enough as a daughter. I wasn't enough in the job that I've been, either to my staff or to my you know, my management. I just had that feeling and I embraced that. And the more I had that feeling, and the more I fed into it, the
mm,
worse it got, the bigger it got, the more it looked, until it became too much. And so that's how I came across the three principles, was really given the opportunity to look at life from a different lens, and really to look at not these things as validating who I am as a person, but
Mm.
really looking at what was the stories that I was engaging with.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
sort of like,
kind of how I came into the three principles, was from that.
so sort of like the narratives that you were telling yourself, or I guess kind of
Hmm.
from a direction of like thinking that you had low self-esteem and low self-confidence and low self-worth, not
Yeah,
seeing that that was all just a story almost. Is that kind of what you mean?
definitely. Like the not enoughness. Like, I created the story of what it took to be like a good parent, and a good, as a single parent functioning, I should still be able to have this career and do this and do this. So it was kind of from that lens. And then also with my parents taking care of, elderly parents with health issues, I wasn't giving them in according to the story that I was creating and measuring myself up against,
Yeah.
that I wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And then at work, because I couldn't travel, because I was a single parent, then I wasn't enough, from my staff, who then were taking the travel or doing the travel, but also to management, because I couldn't stay late like I used to do. So
Mm.
in every place that I looked to measure myself, I was using that as my ruler, as my benchmark to measure myself against. And every one of those, I could see where I was failing, and I could come up with such a list of areas where I was failing,
Yeah.
because that's where I was choosing to that's where I was choosing to look.
Yeah. And so what made that change? What helped you to see that differently? Was there a specific insight that you had, I guess? Because
You know,
I talk a lot about kind of all it takes is seeing one thing differently.
one, yeah. I was listening to a podcast one day because I really was caught up. And I think that when your mind is so busy with how things should be, and trying to control everything and make it fit into a certain box, that it wasn't working out. And so I remember I had taken a leave from work. I was having some health issues. And I was walking one day, and I remember listening to a podcast, and I was listening to somebody speaking about being really, really angry, and then looking at where that anger really was coming from, the narrative that was coming from. And for some reason that shifted within me, where I was like, huh. And I started to look at my narrative a little bit more, and the value that I was giving that narrative. And that was the moment things started to shift very gradually for me.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like a collection of little insights, I guess, along the way as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. And and so because you mentioned you realize that we are loved. So can you talk a little bit more about that, I guess? Because I guess for
Mhm.
me, there's lots of different I refer to it as like wisdom, but there's lots of different layers,
Yeah,
right? So it could be it's that kind of that feeling of being in love, but it can also be the same feeling if we're kind of noticing beautiful things in nature, or talking about, for some people
yeah,
it's divinity, or there's lots of different labels, I guess, for this, aren't there?
yeah. So much. Oh my goodness, so much. And for me now, it's just when I look of, I see this. I used to think that love could be measured, and it could, like in a relationship, or in so many things. Not that I used to think it could be measured, but that's probably how I did.
Yeah.
I look at it. There's this limitless potential there. So for me, that's just who we are as individuals. We just are that. And then, as we kind of go through our experiences in life, things kind of cover it up, so that we think that but it's still always there. It's never taken away from us. I was speaking to a woman the other day, and she's 70 and is dating a younger man who's 55, bless her. And but she was saying, because of her previous marriage, she couldn't trust. And so the conversation I had with her was around the whole aspect of trust. And I said, trust is not about the other person. That's about you trusting yourself, that you're always going to be okay, you know.
that's
And so knowing that, why don't you just play full on, you know?
that's gorgeous. Yeah. I think when it really looks like love is coming from the other person rather than from you. That is something that helped me for sure. And I think I mentioned that in my article, because I was talking about what being in love really is, because I think we can so often look to it being as if it comes from the other person, but it always comes from us. And I remember the one thing that made me have that insight was I was in a relationship and the person disappeared, and I still loved them, but they'd gone. And so I saw really clearly that actually, I mean, not straight away, it took me a few years.
You're right.
But
That's the gradual piece in it.
yeah, but eventually I saw it, it kind of made sense. The principles helped me make sense of the fact that actually, you know, that person had disappeared, but there was still love there. And that meant it actually did come from me. And so that was actually really nice, because I then realized that it was nothing to do with them. You know, we're all, love and connection is always there, regardless of what's going on in kind of human day-to-day life.
Yeah, to me it's just like how much we're kind of tapped in or like tuned into that or not. It just is. So if there's a disconnect, if we're feeling a disconnect, the best place to look is within. And what I was saying to this beautiful soul that I was speaking to was, you know, what an incredibly resilient and amazing person she is, and she's gone through all this stuff. So putting herself out there again is just what an amazing opportunity, you know. And often when I'm speaking to people, they say, you know, they're in relationships where they hold back, you know, because of fear or this. And for me, often, for sure, it would be, you know, that fear that they're gonna be unfaithful or this or that, when that doesn't come. Like if somebody's unfaithful or they're, you know, anything that they choose to do is really about them as an individual and nothing about me or you.
Yeah.
And so going into a relationship or any experience and just being fully open to it means that the potential is there for you. And it's open. Are you willing to step into that versus kind of showing up just a bit, and but can you imagine the potential if you just leave yourself wide open?
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And I guess seeing that impacts how we are in relationships, and I guess in day-to-day life as well. So can you talk a little bit about how that kind of changed things for you when you did see that?
Mm. I mean, I haven't been in a serious relationship since that, in the romantic way, but I certainly, even it shows up in how, when I'm with, like, you know, my friends or my family or with my son, knowing there's a story that I always give in my workshops. When there was one time my dad had passed away quite suddenly and my mom had come to live with us, and it was Halloween, and I was trying to get dinner. My mom doesn't eat vegetables, Finley doesn't eat potatoes, so I'm cooking and I'm trying to get Finley ready for Halloween, but in my head I'm also worried about my mom going to try and answer the door. So I'm caught up in a lot of thinking, and Finley went to get something from the fridge and he turned around and he spilled milk. And I reacted to that and I yelled at him. And then I was cleaning it up, and he got upset. He went upstairs, and I was cleaning it up and I realized, and I started laughing because, like, literally it was just spilt milk that I was cleaning it. It was just spilt milk.
Yeah.
But the reaction that I had to him wasn't coming from the spilt milk. The reaction was coming from the narrative that I was engaging with at the time when it happened. And that was, why am I cooking all these separate meals? Why am I doing, there's so much to do, and the stress. And that's what I was engaging with, and that's what I was reacting from. And I think that's the change for me, is seeing that in any given situation, in any given moment, that's what we're reacting from. And so is the other person.
Yeah.
And I see that until I don't, because we're human, that sometimes I don't see that right away. Exactly. I don't know about you, but there are days when I know this understanding, and I don't embrace that knowledge right away. But for me, that the space of me to come back to knowing that is much quicker now.
Yeah.
And when there's strong emotions, they don't feel so intense because I know where they're coming from, and it's kind of like an invitation to look, okay, what is that narrative that I'm engaging with? I say it's like the ticker tape on the news channel. Like, what else is going on there? Am I taking one of those news stories down and feeding into it and inquiring about it and wanting to know more? And it's the same thing with our thoughts. The more we kind of pile them on versus just letting them flow.
Yeah.
So it changes how I show up.
Yeah. And I guess when you kind of aren't in that space of thinking, then you just fall back into that sense of love, which is kind of
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Go on.
yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. It's just an observation. It's just something that came to mind that felt true for me, I guess. It's like underneath all of the thoughts is kind of our natural essence, which is love. Like that's always there. And if we could just see that other people were operating from their thought bubbles and we're operating from
Yeah.
ours, and it's all just made up, we can bounce back into that natural love.
Yeah, and even the whole thing with confidence and self-worth and all that kind of stuff, the way that I look at that now, and I was just having a conversation with my son about it, was, it's we're not born kind of judging, oh my goodness, like I only wet my diaper this, or nappies this many times, or like learning how to walk and you judge yourself on how many times you fall down. We don't do that. That's our natural state of just kind of going with the flow and pivoting. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. If you watch babies, 1 minute they're laughing, the next minute they're crying, and that's the beautiful essence of life. That's just how it is. It's when we start engaging with a narrative that, you know, that we're not, like when I was talking about that I wasn't myself, like I wasn't worthy enough, like in the way that I was dealing with Finley or with my job or with my parents. My self-worth, I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel enough because I was engaging with a whole lot of stories and thoughts and believing that they were real. And that's the whole thing with, confidence and self-esteem and self-worth, and knowing that part of it. It's like maybe engaging with those thoughts with a little bit of openness and curiosity and wonder, like, where does that come from? And questioning that. And that's the part for me that's so beautiful to watch and have conversations about.
Yeah, and the conversation, I think there's just something about the conversation that can help us uncover so much as well. But I liked what you said there about kind of, it's like almost got this sense of like being kinder to ourselves as well. And I think when we talk about self-love, I mean, I don't know how you would define that. I guess we've kind of covered that a little bit really. But I think a lot of people feel like there's something to do in order to love ourselves.
Yeah,
And that's something that I'd like to talk about, because I guess I don't know whether it gets confused with self-care or, but there seems to be this striving for self-love or self-confidence or self-esteem, instead of seeing that actually underneath all the thinking that we haven't got those things it's there anyway.
Maybe kind of looking at, or maybe like, what is self-love? When I talk about it, self-love is just part of love.
Yeah.
And the whole kind of, and it's just like a pie, like, so my Mental Health Rocks, what you were talking about, the campaign that we're doing in the UK and in Canada. When we talk to kids, we talk about confidence, calm, creativity, wisdom, and resilience, but they're really just all, they're all parts of the whole, like, so it could be like all the ingredients that makes up a pie. And to me, the self-worth, self-esteem, all that kind of stuff, it is all just something. It could be little separate ingredients, but it's separate, but it's not, they all overlap.
Yeah.
So to me, self-love is, maybe a sign of self-love is self-care, when you're extra kind to yourself. That, so that to me is something where it's being open and curious, and maybe being kinder and more open to that. Like, so I read, there's a quote somewhere that said, you've spent all this time criticizing and judging yourself.
Yeah.
You know, how about you try something else?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I've been watching this in general, how people tend to really focus on the criticizing or judging of others and of ourselves.
Mm.
And that seems to be like almost like the natural go-to first, instead of looking at what's amazing. And and that's incredible when you start having that conversation and tapping into that within yourself.
Yeah. And I remember like thinking that other people were judging me and realizing it was also me that was judging me, because I was just experiencing my thinking about what they were thinking. So it wasn't really even them judging me as well. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but yeah,
You had decided what the conversation was going
yeah.
to be.
But yeah, the other thing I was kind of pointing to was that it almost feels like with a lot of the kind of self-care and self-love things that there's somewhere to get to, as if it's
Yeah.
a destination that we have to seek and find. And for me, it was just about seeing that actually, it already is in there. It's already built in. Um,
Yeah.
we're already loved. We're already confident. We already have self-esteem. It's just for our thinking. Like if we didn't have all these thoughts, we would already be able to see these things really clearly.
It's so true. But if you look at the self-help industry, like I don't even know if it's a billion or $1 trillion industry, but I did a quick search on because we were going to talk like confidence, even looking at the books on Amazon on confidence.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's like, I think there was like over 60,000 of them. Like
Yeah.
that's insane when you think about it. And if that was working, why why
Yeah.
would why would we still
It's
need
so
these?
true,
And
and
like,
it's something that I'm writing a book about as well, which I think is a $13 billion industry, and it's
right?
kind of rapidly growing as well. And it's like, well, is that really helping? And it's also based on the premise that we need help, and actually we're not broken.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was something that really helped me in seeing kind of, the thing about self-love and self-esteem and all of that. It's like my realization was there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing to fix. And so I would spend a lot of time using affirmations and things like that. And my
yeah,
thing as well was, I wasn't enough because my dad had left when I was 4, and I had a lot of thinking about never being enough. So I would sit in front of the mirror and, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough, keep
yeah,
repeating it. And then I just feel like a failure with the affirmations because I
yeah.
still don't believe it. And it wasn't until I came across the principles that I saw actually the truth is I am enough. It's just I can't see it clearly because my state of mind is just in that narrative.
It's often what I say to people is, what position are you starting from? Because if you're starting from the state of mind that you're broken and you need to be fixed, you're going to go looking for things to fix you.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna might find something like that's a temporary fix, and then that's gonna not last, and you're gonna continue to look and for more and more. Whereas if you start from the mindset that, yeah, your thinking might be clouded, but you are not broken and you are not lacking.
Yeah.
And I know that's sometimes hard for people almost to hear with some of the people that I work with.
Yeah.
When I say you're not broken, there is a piece of you inside that can never be touched. So if you start from that space, you look in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gorgeous. And kind of when you see it, it then becomes like hilarious in a way. It's like I spent all those years striving to be more worthy, and I was already
I
worthy. I just
know.
didn't see it. It's like just a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is such a fun journey to have with people, in a fun conversation where you start to peel back the layers,
Yeah.
versus adding stuff on. And you need these strategies. I love when I see articles about the 10 steps to become, like, to be self-confident. Well, you know and that's the thing, where it's like, as if that's where it is. You already are. You're already, like you say, enough and worthy and loved, because you're born like that, and that can never be taken away.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful space. Like you say, the women and children that I work with that have been trafficked, I think one of the things that blew me away in the beginning was to hear them feel like they didn't even, like they weren't even worthy of medical attention or anything. Like they had just decided, and they had heard over time and time again, that they were broken, they weren't worthy, they were nothing.
Mm.
And it's a beautiful space and a journey to go on where you help them uncover this amazing part inside, and it's a completely different conversation with, you need to do A, B, and C versus, you know, just kind of peeling back. Let's explore that.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have those conversations.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And I love how you're helping people in that way as well. I bet there's so much there's very special about that. And also just showing, how people can suffer and still transform as well.
Oh my goodness, for sure. And and there's the thing about like suffering, like all of these things and all of the stories that we tell ourselves. It's like that feeling unworthiness and all that. Like I've worked with professional athletes, and I've worked with, women and children who've been trafficked. The same things, it's the same narratives that they're engaging with. So, like there's no kind of doesn't differentiate between your, like money and power and socioeconomic status, or your job or your bank balance.
Mm.
And so that's the beautiful thing as well, is it's the same message.
Yeah.
It's the same message for all.
Yeah. No, that's great. Um, we do have one question actually. I don't know if anybody else has a question they want to add in, but I just thought it'd be nice to just take a little pause and answer this one. So Susan says, would you be able to talk a little more about sitting with your, for example, self-critical thoughts, inquiry in brackets, versus getting into the trap of analyzing them?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Yeah, would you be able to talk a little more about sitting with your self-critical thoughts
Oh,
versus getting into the trap of analyzing them?
hmm. Yes. Sitting with them, here's the amazing thing about the power of thought that to me is absolutely incredible, is that we have a thought, and then if we don't analyze it and just let it flow, a fresh thought will come. Now, the statistics are kind of strange. They're between 60,000 to 100,000 thoughts. I've heard the range in there. We have 60,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. So we don't sit and kind of engage and analyze all of them. But when we do, we start to kind of feed life into them as if they are real. And that can look really, really real. And it's a very innocent perception that they are real. And from that thought that we have, that say, like for me, it was not enough, then I would have that feeling, and it would be a physiological feeling in my body where it kind of transpired into anxiety. And I would engage with that thought as if it was real. And and more than that, I was not just engaging with the thought, but I was carrying on in my life as if that thought was real, as if I wasn't enough. And there's a beautiful space where you can acknowledge the fact that that thought's there, you know be curious about it. For me, when I'm working with my clients, I'll often say, like, call it a roommate in your head, what's the subtext of what your roommate's saying to you at that point in time, versus accepting that that's the truth. I don't know if there's something more you would add to that.
Yeah, I really love that actually. I love how you've talked about kind of having 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And that really hammers home that, we can latch onto one of those 80,000 thoughts. And when you think about
Yeah.
it, it's like, well, if we didn't latch onto it, it would just fly through to the next one. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That is amazing.
I think so. In the workshop that I was doing in Toronto this week, I was saying to them, I think that if you break down that thoughts, like, oh, um, that per minute, that's something like, is it 43 or 48 thoughts per minute? Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's a lot of thoughts to have in a minute. But for the most part, they're just there. It could be, oh, the color, I need to paint my wall, I need to change this, I need to do this, maybe, but they're there and they're just kind of happily floating through my mind. And it's just kind of where one sticks and I go, oh, and it's usually one that we feel some resistance, you know, there's a thought there, and it could be so I said to Finley often, if there's something where you feel a really strong emotion too, that might be an invitation to look and just see what's your roommate saying to you, what's that roommate's, the dialogue that's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I love that. And we're kind of looking out for the thing that backs up what we've thought our entire lives, I guess. Sometimes.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah, we look for evidence of it, right?
Yeah. And really it's just meaningless when you see, because for a while I just believed every thought that I had. That's a lot of thoughts if there's 80,000 of them. I didn't really see the made up nature of them. And when I began to see that there were so many of them and I was creating all of them, that really helped me, because I realized that, it wasn't necessary. Just because there was a thought in my head didn't mean that it was real. And I think that really offers some freedom as well, because we don't have to, even if we latch onto them, we can still know that we've kind of made them up.
There's almost like a humor in that. There's a kindness, there's an invitation to be kind. One of the things I was talking about with the group I was chatting with this week was about, and a perfect one for all the couples or relationships and for Valentine's Day, is the expectation box. So we'll create this, say if your partner, we think they should do something, so we have this expectation that they should do something. And then we hold them to that standard. We haven't had the discussion with them. We've just decided this is how they should act or react. And then we hold them to that. And then not only do we hold them to that, but when they don't live up to the standard that we've made up that they should, but we haven't shared with them, then we actually get annoyed with them, or we want them to be accountable. Whereas that whole conversation has happened in our heads, like with ourselves, nothing to do with the other person.
Yeah.
Versus having a conversation where it's like you have an agreement. You know what? It's Valentine's Day. I would love to have flowers on Valentine's Day. That would make me feel special. Is this something that you can do? And I mean, that's just a silly example. But it completely changes things.
Kind of have that expectation, or you expect that they're gonna buy you the flowers, and then if they don't, you get in a mood, and it's like you didn't.
Yeah.
But it's like there's something we just think that we don't have to ask, and it's
and now I'm just like, ask.
Yeah.
If you want something, ask. Never be afraid to ask. And it's like, it's a fun time to explore even within yourself. If you're not comfortable asking for something, just kind of be curious about that out of curiosity. Why do I feel a resistance to that? And often that'll come from a feeling of worthiness, and that feeling again, and where's that coming from, and what's the subtext? What's your roommate chatting about? And it's a really fun exploration to have, but never taking your thoughts too seriously.
Yeah, I love that, and about not taking them too seriously. But also, when you do, you start to realize that it's quite hilarious what's going on in your head sometimes. I know I certainly have a lot. I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, it would be a relationship changer now for me to know all of this, and to know that all of the power, it makes you accountable, but it's also very empowering, and to not limit yourself, even like in relationships in your life, is not to limit yourself, not to kind of think that you can control all this, because it's just like the weather. You can't control the fact that a new thought's going to come. You can't control the weather. You can decide whether to on a rainy day to put on a rain jacket, but you can't stop the rain from coming,
Mm.
you know. And the other beautiful thing to know is that the rain's going to pass, thoughts are going to pass. That's just what it's like. Thoughts are like the weather. I love that metaphor. It
Yeah.
works. It works for me.
It works for me too. Yeah. And one of the things because you're talking about resistance, just I know a lot of people can have resistance to being alone. And I did for a long, long time. It was like, because I had grown up as an only child and my dad had left, and I felt very much like being alone was, because I was alone because I wasn't worthy. So I had a lot of resistance to being alone until I then kind of had this insight about, actually I realized I quite liked being alone because I'd been a lonely child, and it was actually quite preferable at times. But is there anything you would say to people who are struggling with being alone?
Yeah, I honestly, oh gosh, I love I love being alone as well, but it is one of these things where sometimes if you can change the lens that you're looking through, instead of thinking of it as that you're alone because you're unworthy, how about like kind of being open and curious? You know, that starting point, if you're starting looking at something like you're broken and you need to be fixed, you'll look at it from a different perspective. If you look at being alone just means, oh my goodness, you're amazing and you're alone right now, and looking at the potential within that is not, the fact that you're alone is not a reflection of your worthiness, your attractiveness, your success, any of that stuff. It's just this moment in time, that's what you are. And if there's resistance to being alone, that's where it's like kind of getting curious about that resistance. Like, what is the roommate, if the roommate was talking to you, what would the roommate be saying? If is it something about unworthiness, or you know attractive, or lose 10 pounds, gain 10 pounds? None of that stuff matters, because the true essence of who you are, that's just kind of like the shell. All of those things are just the shell. So if there's a resistance, looking at where that resistance comes from, and maybe a simple question is it true? Because you'll look for evidence that it's true, but is it really, really true? Or is this just a thought that you've given a whole lot of weight to?
Yeah. And I know, some of my, can you still hear me actually? Because my internet.
Yeah.
Some of my clients in the past have kind of struggled with this, and kind of feeling like being alone is like they're only happy when they're with company or in company of other people. So is there anything that you can say about that?
Gosh, to me now it's like I can find joy and happiness everywhere. Like my whole trip, like going to Toronto, the Uber driver, the guy that I sat beside on the plane, everything was amazing about it. And I think it's when we're looking through a lens. One of the ways that I would put this, I've done this with my son and I've done it with clients, is sometimes he'll, like on a Monday morning, he'll be like, "Oh, Mondays suck," and I'll be like, "Really?" you know. And if you think about even just hearing that, how that feels in your body, the energy that is, Mondays suck. And then I just said, okay, so let's play a little bit with this. How does it feel in your body if I say, oh, it's Monday, new week, new day, curious what's going to happen today? It feels lighter in your body. There's an energetic difference in how that feels. So if you're by yourself and thinking about reasons to be unhappy, or you'll find them if you're looking. You'll find loads of things. Whereas if you're looking at all the amazing things about being alone, you'll find that as well. And it's just it's the littlest things. It can be that you get to decide what you're going to watch on television. You get to decide, what you're going to have for dinner. There's a whole bunch of things there. And romantic relationships aren't just where connection can be found. Like, so if there's a sense of loneliness that it's coming from, that connection can be found in so many other avenues as well. And are you open to that?
And that's why at the start of this, I kind of talk a little bit about what self-rediscovery means. Because for me, it's like seeing that we are love underneath all the thinking
Oh,
we're,
yeah.
but it's also like we have the choice to play in being human. And so we have
Yes.
so much opportunity to kind of dive into, if you like, all the self-care things and explore all of those and see what lights us up. And I guess it's when we're in that
Yeah.
kind of lit up feeling that's when we're back in our wisdom. That's when we're back in that love. So I guess
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to kind of rediscover if we're feeling like that and feeling alone and feeling uncomfortable and resistance with that. It's kind of an invitation into rediscovering what lights us up and playing with that. Would you say?
Oh, 100%. 100%. One of the things, my favorite, there's this guy, Tom Cheese, got these fabulous YouTube videos. But in one of them, he asks like people, what is this? And he holds up a pen. So you might look at this and say a pen, end of story. Whereas he said he would look at it and say, it's a pen. It's got plastic. It's got ink. Wonder where, like, what that ink is made of. Wonder what that plastic is made of. There's so much more to know.
I love that.
You know, if you're willing to play in that, there's so much more to know. And that's why when I look at things now, the opportunity is immense. It's infinite. But for ourselves and our self-imposed limitations. So whether we're in a relationship and holding back, why? Like play full on. And if you're by yourself, oh my goodness, just embrace that. Because who's to say tomorrow you're not going to bump into someone who just rocks your world? Who knows? But knowing the
Yeah,
fact
then you
that
can't be
the
alone and
happiness,
embrace it now. I'm joking.
yeah, yeah. But you know, like, and that's the thing, and it's like you never know. There's somebody who's writing the script that's got much more power than we have. We just think that we can control things, and the more you try to control it, the more you will be met with resistance. So just play full on. If you're by yourself, just embrace that, enjoy that. Buy yourself flowers, buy yourself chocolate, buy yourself whatever it is that, you know, feeds you, makes you happy.
Yeah, and you
And
don't even have to ask.
yeah, oh yeah. There's no, the only expectation box is with yourself. But, and that's the amazing part is just, I think life is incredible. And I've never embraced that, the potential that's in front of us and around us in every moment, like I do now. Like it's such a gift.
Yeah. And I love as well that you work with children. So is there anything particular you can bring to us from your work with children about that?
Oh gosh.
Lessons.
Do you know kids get this? Kids get this much quicker than adults do. Kids understand that there is this innate part that's within them. And maybe it's because I heard somebody saying like they're not weighted down with thoughts and the belief that all those thoughts carry so much weight.
Yeah.
Kids are like it's like that gut instinct or that wisdom that's there. So there's some kids who are engaging with stories and they're engaging with beliefs and stuff like that. But when you start to unpack that with them, their creativity is beyond amazing, as is everybody's. But I don't know, the things that come out of kids' mouths sometimes, I love it and I'm floored by it. um but you know what, can you imagine, and this is why my passion is what it is, why I spend a lot of time with kids. As a child, if you knew that your feelings of everything are really created, you know, from engaging with your thoughts and the power of thought,
Yeah.
and looking at your state of mind as an indicator as how kind of far away from, you know, far from or kind of more tapped into your inner wisdom versus always looking for a solution or validation or worthiness from another person, place, or thing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think if we a society of kids that grow up like that, I think that's incredible. So for me, that's where I see so much potential. And so it's a journey. It's a journey with them too, but it's a beautiful journey.
Oh, that's gorgeous. We have another question, and Susan said thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome, Susan.
So we have a question that says, a lot of people tend to have anxiety about asking the simple questions. And as you say, by asking, you can alleviate a lot of tensions. But how do you recognize the things where you should just ask? Is there even a need to recognize, or should we just throw everything out there?
To me, I don't know how you feel about this question, but for me, it's like if it comes up to you, ask it. If there's a reason that you're curious about something, there's no harm in asking. And
Yeah.
if asking somebody a question makes them uncomfortable, the onus is on them to say that makes me feel uncomfortable, or that's, if they have resistance to that's 100% about them. For
Yeah.
me, I just say, if it comes to you, then, you know, it's little things. Like I took my son to a flea market, which is not my ideal place to be because I'm a bit of a germaphobe. But he was looking for like a video, some kind of video game for something that he plays. And there was the video games, and then there was this little holder for it. And he said, I wonder how much it is. I said, just go and ask the guy. And he said, oh, no, I don't want to ask. I said, well, just go ask. Who cares? So he went and he asked, and the man said, oh, you can just take it and put the game in it. And he loves this case. Like, I don't know why this case, he just loves this case. But the thing is if we don't ask, then we leave it for ourselves to create the, potential answers.
Yeah.
Versus just asking the questions and having that clarity there.
That's so true. And also, I think for me, I'd just say that we always know where the intention is coming from with the question. And so
Yeah.
it's also like if in the moment the question is coming from a lot of thinking, eventually that will settle and you'll know whether to ask or not as well. It's like eventually we'll get to a place of knowing that we definitely want to ask that question, or we definitely don't need to ask that question. I think eventually.
That's a great, that's a great point. And that's one of the ones when we're caught up with a lot of thoughts. I say it's like a thought storm. It's often that I would use as like the snow globe shaken.
Yeah.
We don't have the same amount of clarity. So if you're caught up in a lot of thoughts, or if you're feeling a lot of intense emotions like anger or fear or, something, sometimes letting that settle a little bit, you'll either get your answer or you'll get a clear question. So giving if you're coming from a space where you're feeling a lot of emotion, like there's the thought storms happening and you're engaged with that it looks so real, and there's one coming after the other after the other after the other, that's the time to kind of give yourself a little bit of space and time for your thoughts to settle.
Yeah, that's great. We have another question which says, which I think ties into this actually. It says, when we do feel lonely, the bad roommate is often way more enticing and can provide the evidence far more easily. How do we look away from that side and distance ourselves to see those more positive thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it's kind of like that, the good angel and the angel and the devil on your shoulders. I think starting off knowing that your roommate, the dialogue that's happening with your roommate is made up. It's not real. And knowing that, not to give that so much weight, because it feels real. And when you're really feeling like in a lonely state, that does feel real. But even asking a simple question that can maybe change your starting point is there another way to look at this? So you could be in a feeling of feeling really lonely and coming up with a whole list of reasons why you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that, and that loneliness is there. Instead of going somewhere else where you're looking for the solution to that, is looking within and just asking that simple question, is there another way I could look at this? Like, is this really real? And also kind of giving it a little bit of space and seeing, does that dialogue change over time?
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I love that. It's the space. It's like practicing the pause.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Are there any...
I wonder if that answered the question for them. Do you
Yeah, I think if that didn't answer the question, then just type another question in the box, or if anybody,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, if anybody else has any more questions before we wrap up, then just pop it in the box now, and we can answer it before we finish. But yeah, it's lovely to have all these questions and be able to respond in the moment, I guess, which is always lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what it is, and it's such an interesting topic, and it's something where, and I mean, for both you and I, we've been diving into this for a long time. You know, like so what you and I might think is a very natural part of a conversation or a very sufficient answer might not be to somebody else, you know. And so for sure, like the questions are, there's no bad question. Just like when I'm saying, if you want to ask something, just put it out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why these conversations are so powerful as well, because everybody's kind of throughout the summit, you know, we're all talking about the same thing in response to different topics, but ultimately it's the same wisdom that we're all referring to, and we
Yeah.
all talk about it in
Oh my
different ways,
goodness.
which is lovely, because you know, people hear things in different ways, and that's why conversations are so powerful, because yeah, it just offers opportunity, and it's all about staying curious, like you say. I love that. It's that
I
curiosity.
do. I love curiosity and wonder. I love those words. But the other thing that I loved about you doing this, and particularly today, it's kind of funny how this fit into today for both of our schedules,
Yeah.
is that people are almost afraid to talk about this. And this is a thing now where I am no longer afraid. So I was doing this workshop this week, 3 days in Toronto, and I just show up fully as I am, you know, and I'm not telling them stories that some people might be like, huh. But, you know, when you just show up, and that's just life, that's the beauty of life. And that's the immense amazingness about life, is just to show up and to have this conversation where a lot of people won't talk about self-worth or feeling unworthy or feeling unloved or scared to be alone, all of these things. It's a beautiful space. So I appreciate the fact that you created this and the
Oh,
space for that conversation.
thank you. Well, I love to do that. That's often why I talk about suffering, because I think, you know, suffering can seem like such a heavy word, but
Yeah.
at times we're all kind of suffering day to day with different things.
Oh
And they can
gosh.
be these kind of topics that, yeah, that we're exploring, and that's kind of why I wanted to do it. So I really love that you love that part of it.
You love that, I love it. And
Yeah.
you know, there's something else to add on to that, is just because we're saying all this stuff that we get this and this kind of stuff, that doesn't mean to say that we don't fall into that conversation with our roommates and think, oh my goodness, that's real.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that because we're all human, we're all going to tap into that, and our roommate's going to seem really, really real. It just means that some days we're going to give our roommate a little bit more credit,
Yeah.
and some days we're just going to look at it and go, oh, okay, you know,
Yeah.
go back in your room or your closet, whatever.
That's it.
But
It's
yeah,
like that awareness just gives us the ability to have a lighter experience of our suffering in a way at times, but
curiosity.
we're human. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I say often, it's just like, even with Finley, like we laugh because it's like sometimes I can be in the moment, or the middle of like an adult temper tantrum.
Yeah.
and and it just is, and it'll pass, and if I don't kind of really engage in it, yeah, I have my moments with it, and then it passes. And it's just like kids, whenever we're feeling intense emotions, it's that our thoughts are really, really busy, and our state of mind, we're not seeing things in the same way that we would if we give our thoughts the time and space to settle.
Yeah. Oh, you've explained that so perfectly for me. It's, yeah, it's just gorgeous. And I think, again, this conversation was just such a gorgeous feeling. I really have enjoyed
It
it.
does, it really does, me too.
And Bobby has said, thank you, smiling a lot here. So
Oh, good,
yeah,
good.
it's working.
Yay.
Yeah. So yeah, unless anybody has any other questions, I guess it'd be good for people to just know how they can find out more about you and hear more from you.
I have my website, which is jessielynnmacdonald.com. I have a Facebook page, which I think is Jessie Lynn Coaching or JL McDonald Coaching. I can't remember. Maybe. Um, And I'm on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, same thing. And people can email me if you have questions, if you want to chat about any of this, or just kind of, my email is Jessie-Lynn McDonald at gmail.com.
Perfect. And if you send me over all of those when if you get, figure
Oh
out,
yeah. Okay.
I'll pop that into the member vault as well, so that people can have the links in there to.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'll do that.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing today.
Oh, such a pleasure.
Really gorgeous. Just for everybody so that they know, next week we have on the 21st of February, the next speaker, we're joined by a very special guest. We have Michael Neal here. So he is,
oh nice.
Yeah, so he is the first speaker really who helped me to see something very different about how the mind worked. And so yeah, he really helped me kind of embrace the 3 principles understanding that I and Jessie Lynn share. So it's going to be really special. Kind of
Cool.
with that one. So just to give you a little overview of Michael, Michael Neal is an internationally renowned author, speaker, and thought leader, challenging the cultural mythology that stress and struggle are a prerequisite to creativity and success. I really love that. So,
I do too. I'm thinking jeepers.
yeah, I love that. It's kind of one that you have to wrap your head around a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, what? But yeah, I can't wait for him to explore that. But his best-selling books, podcasts, keynotes, trainings, and retreats have inspired and impacted millions of people on 6 continents around the world. His mission is to unleash the human potential with intelligence, humor, and heart, and his unique brand of loving disruption has made him a beloved catalyst, coach, and creative spark plug to CEOs, leaders, creative artists, and anyone who wants to get more out of themselves and their lives whilst making more of a difference in the world. He's listed as one of the top 30 coaching thought leaders in the world by the independent ranking agency globalgurus.org, and travels the world sharing his message of possibility and hope that miracles happen all the time and a better life is never more than one thought away. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Jeepers.
Yeah, I know.
Sign me up.
He's amazing, isn't he? So
He is. Yeah, he's lovely. Yeah.
very excited to have him here next week. And yeah, so come join us live and hear more. But yeah, thank you again, Jessie.